Dr. Isabella Santos stared at the ice core sample through her microscope, her breath catching in her throat. After 15 years of studying Antarctic ice formations, she had never seen anything like this. Embedded within the ancient ice, approximately 100,000 years old according to their initial dating, was a perfectly geometric crystalline structure that seemed to pulse with an inner light. The research station's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she adjusted the microscope's focus. The structure wasn't just unusual, it was impossible. Its lattice pattern followed no known geological formation principles, and its composition defied their most sophisticated analysis methods. "Dr. James," she called out, her voice echoing through the empty lab. "You need to see this." The heavy footsteps of her colleague, Dr. Richard James, approached from the adjacent room. His tall frame cast a shadow over her workspace as he peered down at her findings. "What have you got, Isabella?" She stepped aside, gesturing to the microscope. "Look at the crystalline formation in sample ICE 2187. Tell me I'm not going crazy." Richard adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and leaned forward to examine the sample. His usual stoic expression gradually transformed into one of bewilderment. "This can't be right," he muttered, adjusting the focus. "The geometric patterns, they're too perfect." "Exactly," Isabella replied, pulling up the spectrographic analysis on her tablet. "And look at this, the material isn't registering on any known geological spectrum. It's as if it shouldn't exist." Richard finished her sentence, straightening up. "We need to contact the board immediately." But Isabella hesitated, her hand hovering over her tablet. "Wait. Remember what happened with the Thompson discovery last year? They shut down his entire operation when he claimed to have found evidence of ancient bacterial life. We need more data before we go public with this." Richard nodded slowly, understanding the implications. Their funding was already hanging by a thread, and extraordinary claims required extraordinary evidence. "What do you suggest?" "Give me 48 hours, Isabella said, her dark eyes gleaming with determination. "I want to run every possible test we have available. If this is what I think it is, we need to be absolutely certain." Over the next 2 days, Isabella barely left the lab. She ran molecular structure analyses, conducted radiocarbon dating tests, and even attempted to measure any potential energy emissions from the crystal. The results only deepened the mystery. The crystal's age didn't match the surrounding ice, it appeared to be significantly older, possibly predating human civilization itself. Its molecular structure seemed to shift slightly when exposed to different types of radiation, suggesting some form of response to external stimuli. Most puzzling of all, their equipment occasionally registered tiny bursts of unknown energy emanating from within the structure. On the morning of the 3rd day, Isabella made a breakthrough. While examining the crystal under ultraviolet light, she noticed a pattern of microscopic markings along its surface. They weren't random scratches or natural formations, they appeared to be deliberate, like some form of writing or code. "This changes everything," she whispered to herself, carefully photographing each marking. The implications were staggering. If these markings were indeed artificial, it meant the crystal wasn't just an anomaly, it was an artifact. Something made this, something intelligent, and left it frozen in the Antarctic ice thousands of years ago. As she worked to document her findings, Isabella failed to notice the subtle changes beginning to occur within the crystal. Under the constant exposure to the lab's various scanning equipment, the internal light had begun to pulse more frequently. The energy readings, previously barely detectable, were slowly but steadily increasing. Richard returned to the lab that evening to find Isabella still hunched over her workstation, surrounded by printouts and digital displays. "Isabella, you need to rest," he insisted, placing a hand on her shoulder. She shook her head, pointing to her latest findings. "Look at these markings, Richard. They're not random. They're organized in repeating patterns, like some kind of language or mathematical sequence. This could be the greatest discovery in human history. Richard examined the photographs, his scientific skepticism warring with the undeniable evidence before him. Even if you're right, we need to be careful about how we proceed. This kind of discovery, it could change everything we think we know about human history, about our place in the universe. I know, Isabella replied, her voice barely above a whisper. That's why we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with before anyone else gets involved. As they discussed their next steps, neither scientist noticed the crystal's pulsing had synchronized with the electrical frequency of the lab's equipment. Deep within its geometric structure, ancient mechanisms were beginning to awaken, responding to the first intelligent interaction they had experienced in millennia. The discovery that had started as a curious anomaly in an ice core was about to become something far more significant. Humanity's first contact with an alien artifact was imminent, and the world would never be the same. The first sign that something had changed came at exactly 3:47 a.m. The lab's monitoring systems registered a sudden spike in electromagnetic activity, centered precisely on the crystal specimen. Isabella, who had finally been convinced to rest in her small office adjacent to the lab, was jolted awake by the blaring of emergency alarms. She rushed into the lab, her heart pounding. The crystal was floating 3 inches above its containment unit, bathed in a soft blue light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the facility's power grid. Every piece of electronic equipment in the room was activating and deactivating in the same pattern, creating a synchronized dance of light and sound. "Richard," she shouted into her phone, quickly initiating emergency protocols. "Get down here now. It's responding." The crystal's surface had become translucent, revealing intricate internal structures that shifted and moved like living machinery. The microscopic markings she had discovered earlier were now clearly visible, glowing with an internal light that made them appear to float in the air around the artifact. Dr. James arrived minutes later, out of breath and wide-eyed. "Dear God," he whispered, watching as the crystal continued its impossible display. "What triggered this?" Before Isabella could respond, a beam of coherent light shot from the crystal to the lab's main computer terminal. Lines of incomprehensible symbols began flooding the screen, scrolling faster than human eyes could follow. The computer's processors whirred at maximum capacity, trying to handle the massive influx of data. "It's not just active," Isabella breathed, "it's trying to communicate." The next few hours were a blur of activity. They brought in Dr. Rashid Kumar, their resident computer systems expert, who worked frantically to capture and analyze the data stream. The crystal continued its transmission, seemingly attempting to interface with their primitive technology. "The pattern is consistent with some form of language," Rashid explained, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "But it's unlike anything I've ever seen. The complexity suggests it's not just a message, but possibly a program or set of instructions." As the sun rose over the Antarctic horizon, casting long shadows through the facility's windows, the team made their first breakthrough. Rashid's algorithms had detected a mathematical sequence within the data, prime numbers, followed by basic geometric principles, building up to more complex mathematical concepts. "It's teaching us how to understand it," Isabella realized, watching as new patterns emerged in the data. Like how we would try to communicate with an intelligent species, starting with universal mathematical concepts as a foundation for language. The crystal's glow intensified as if responding to their understanding. The temperature in the lab began to rise, and the air became charged with static electricity. Warning lights flashed across their monitoring equipment as energy levels continued to climb. "We need to contain this," Richard insisted, moving toward the emergency shutdown controls. "We have no idea what kind of power we're dealing with." Isabella grabbed his arm. "Wait. Look at this pattern, it's showing us something specific. These aren't random energy fluctuations, they're coordinated. The artifact isn't just awakening, it's preparing for something." The data stream suddenly shifted, displaying what appeared to be star charts. But the configurations were wrong, the positions of celestial bodies were dramatically different from any known arrangement. Either the crystal was malfunctioning, or... "These are historical star positions," Isabella whispered, her scientific mind racing with implications. "From thousands, maybe millions of years ago. This thing isn't just ancient, it's been waiting, dormant, for someone to find it." A new sequence began, showing what appeared to be a three-dimensional map. At its center was their location in Antarctica, but spreading outward were lines of force or energy, connecting to other points around the globe. Some were deep underwater, others buried beneath mountains or ice sheets. "There are more of them," Richard realized, his voice hoarse. "This isn't an isolated artifact. It's part of a network." Before they could process this revelation, the crystal emitted a high-pitched tone that made everyone cover their ears. The light show intensified, and for a brief moment, the air itself seemed to ripple like water. When the effect subsided, the crystal had changed. Its surface was now completely transparent, revealing a core of swirling energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. "Isabella," Rashid called out, his voice tense. "The data, it's changed. This isn't just information anymore. The crystal is broadcasting some kind of signal into space." The implications hit them all at once. Whatever this artifact was, whoever had created it, they had just announced to the universe that it was active. Humanity's first contact with alien technology had just become a beacon, and they had no way of knowing who, or what, might be receiving the signal. The crystal continued its rhythmic pulsing, each beat sending out another burst of data into the cosmos. In the coming hours, similar signals would begin emanating from other points around the globe as ancient artifacts awakened from their millennial slumber. The game of cosmic hide-and-seek was over, and humanity had unknowingly become the key players in a drama that had been set in motion eons ago. The response came faster than anyone could have anticipated. Just 24 hours after the crystal began broadcasting its signal, the Antarctic Research Station's instruments detected an object entering Earth's atmosphere. It moved unlike any known aircraft, decelerating from hypersonic speeds with impossible precision. Isabella and her team watched through the facility's reinforced windows as the object descended through the swirling snow. It was roughly cylindrical, its surface rippling with patterns similar to those found on the crystal. The vessel, there was no other word for it, touched down silently on the ice less than 100 meters from the research station. "Security Protocol Alpha is now in effect," the facility's AI announced calmly. "All personnel please proceed to designated safe zones." But Isabella remained rooted to the spot, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. The vessel's surface shifted, revealing an opening, and a figure emerged. It was tall, nearly 3 meters in height, with a form that seemed to blur the line between organic and mechanical. Its body was composed of interlocking geometric shapes that constantly rearranged themselves, creating an effect that was both beautiful and deeply alien. The being moved toward the facility with deliberate grace. Every step it took left briefly glowing impressions in the ice, each mark identical to the symbols they had discovered on the crystal. As it approached the main entrance, the facility's security systems simply deactivated, as if recognizing some ancient override command. "We need to evacuate," Richard insisted, pulling at Isabella's arm. But she shook her head. "No. This is what the crystal was waiting for. This is why it activated. We need to understand." The alien entity entered the facility, its form somehow adapting to fit through spaces designed for human dimensions. It moved directly toward the lab, seemingly guided by the crystal's energy signature. When it reached the sealed laboratory doors, they opened without resistance. Isabella stepped forward, placing herself between the entity and the crystal. "I'm Dr. Isabella Santos," she announced, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We are researchers, scientists. We mean no harm." The being paused, its geometric form shifting to create what appeared to be a sensory apparatus focused on her. When it spoke, It wasn't with sound but with patterns of light and energy that somehow translated directly into understanding in their minds. "You have awakened the seed," it communicated. "The protocol is now active. I am Guardian, Sequence 7, tasked with overseeing the implementation." "Implementation of what?" Isabella asked, feeling Richard and Rashid move to stand beside her. "The Great Filter," the Guardian responded. "Your species has triggered the test. All civilizations face this moment. Few survive it." The crystal's pulsing intensified, and the Guardian turned its attention to it. The seed contains the combined knowledge of 1,000 extinct civilizations. Species that reached this technological threshold and failed to transcend their limitations. Their experiences, their mistakes, their final moments, all preserved as warnings and lessons for those who follow. Understanding dawned on Isabella. This isn't just an artifact. It's a test. A challenge. A chance, the Guardian corrected. The universe is filled with the ruins of species that destroyed themselves upon discovering technologies they weren't ready to control. The Seeders created this system to identify civilizations capable of surviving their own advancement. The crystal was now projecting images into the air, scenes of worlds burning, civilizations tearing themselves apart, species becoming extinct through war, environmental destruction, and technological hubris. But interspersed with these apocalyptic visions were glimpses of something else: worlds transformed, species evolved, consciousness expanded beyond physical limitations. "The network you discovered connects to similar seeds across your planet," the Guardian continued. "Together, they form a key. Your species now faces a choice: attempt to harness power you may not be ready to control, or demonstrate the wisdom to recognize your limitations." "And if we choose wrong?" Richard asked, though the answer was clear in the images still floating before them. "Then you join the archive," the Guardian stated simply. "Another lesson for future civilizations to learn from." Isabella stepped closer to the crystal, watching as it responded to her proximity. "But you're not here just to observe, are you? The fact that you came so quickly, that you're telling us this, there's more to it." The Guardian's form shifted again, creating what almost appeared to be a gesture of acknowledgement. "The cycle is accelerating. More civilizations are reaching this threshold than ever before. The system was designed to be passive, but circumstances have changed. Forces are stirring in the galaxy that require a more direct approach." As if in response to these words, new data began streaming from the crystal, showing astronomical phenomena that human science had yet to discover. Something was moving through the galaxy, consuming or transforming everything in its path. The images were unclear, but the threat they represented was unmistakable. "We need allies," the Guardian admitted. "But only those who prove themselves worthy of survival. The choice before you will determine humanity's role in what is to come." Hidden truth. The research facility transformed into a hub of frenetic activity as more crystals activated worldwide. Isabella's team worked alongside the Guardian, decoding the vast archive of knowledge contained within the seeds. Each revelation painted a clearer picture of humanity's precarious position in the cosmic order. The Guardian revealed that Earth wasn't chosen randomly. The seeds had been planted during humanity's infancy, carefully positioned to be discovered at precisely the right moment in their technological evolution. The network formed a planetary defense grid, dormant until needed. "Your quantum physics experiments," the Guardian explained, projecting a complex mathematical model into the air. "They've begun attracting attention. There are entities in the cosmos that consider such advancement a threat." Rashid discovered that the crystal's data contained blueprints for technologies beyond human comprehension: clean energy systems, matter manipulation, consciousness transfer. But each advancement came with a warning: examples of civilizations that had destroyed themselves by implementing these technologies too quickly. The Guardian's presence drew attention. Military forces from various nations converged on Antarctica, while others scrambled to secure the awakening seeds in their territories. Global tensions escalated as governments realized the implications of controlling such power. Isabella worked tirelessly to understand the crystal's message, knowing time was running out. The images of the approaching cosmic threat became clearer, a wave of destructive energy that consumed civilizations, breaking down the very fabric of reality in its wake. The seeds weren't just a test, they were humanity's only hope for survival. Evolution's edge. In the final hours, as military forces surrounded the facility, Isabella made a breakthrough. The seeds weren't meant to be controlled, they were meant to guide. The network wasn't a weapon but a transformation matrix, designed to help species evolve beyond their physical limitations. The choice isn't between using the power or rejecting it, she explained to the assembled scientists and military leaders. It's about understanding that we're part of something larger. The seeds don't give us power, they show us how to grow into it naturally. The Guardian confirmed her insight. Your species stands at a crossroads. The wave approaches. You can attempt to fight it with technology you don't fully understand, or you can transform, become something new. Governments argued and threatened, but the decision wasn't theirs to make. The seeds responded to consciousness, to understanding. As Isabella shared her revelation with the world, people began to grasp the truth. The crystals weren't alien technology to be weaponized, they were teachers, offering humanity a chance to transcend its limitations. The transformation began slowly at first. People near the activated seeds reported expanded consciousness, enhanced empathy, and a deeper connection to reality itself. The change wasn't forced but offered, accepted only by those who understood and embraced it. The Guardian watched as humanity faced its moment of truth. Some fought against the change, clinging to power and control. Others stepped forward into the unknown, accepting the evolution of their species. The seed's light spread across the planet, not as a weapon or a tool, but as a catalyst for change. Isabella stood with Richard and Rashid, watching the aurora-like lights dance across the Antarctic sky. The approaching cosmic wave was visible now, a darkness between the stars that grew larger each night. But humanity was no longer the same species that had first discovered the crystal in the ice. Was this your plan all along? Isabella asked the Guardian. To make us realize we had to change ourselves rather than trying to change the universe around us? The Guardian's form shifted into something more familiar, more human. The greatest civilizations are those that understand that true power comes from evolution, not conquest. You've taken the first step on a path that few species have the wisdom to walk. As the wave approached Earth, humanity faced it not with weapons or technology, but with a unified consciousness evolved beyond physical limitations. The seed's true purpose was fulfilled, not to give humanity the power to fight, but to help them become something that no external force could destroy. The transformation spread across the globe, a peaceful revolution of consciousness and understanding. Earth became a beacon in the cosmos, not of technological might, but of evolutionary transcendence. The wave that had consumed so many civilizations passed through a planet it no longer recognized, leaving behind a humanity that had chosen to rise above its own limitations. Isabella's discovery in the ice had led not to humanity's end, but to its rebirth. The ancient seeds had served their purpose, guiding another species away from the brink of destruction and toward a future limited only by imagination and wisdom.